Hi, my name is Carlos. I'm in the labs of Steve Luck and Yuri Borman at UC Davis, and today I'll be discussing a recent project that I've been working on titled Rewards Elicit Choice Reactivation for Credit Assignment. To start with a bit of background, contingency learning, whereby individuals form associations between outcomes, is supported by two distinct credit assignment systems: a model-free one, where most recent actions are assigned credit for a given outcome. This is slow, computationally inexpensive, and supplemented by weighted exponentially decaying eligibility traces. In this example of playing chess, the last move that led to checkmate would be assigned the most credit, and the subsequent actions would be given some credit with an exponential fall-off. The other system is a model-based one, which is fast to acquire, computationally expensive, tied to a model, and is theorized to involve a causal reinstatement of past choices when an outcome occurs. Let's say here you understand the rules of chess, which is your model, and while moving your queen led to checkmate, it was ultimately moving your horse that was the critical move. The model-based system would reactivate the horse representation to associate it to the outcome, and then the surrounding moves would also be assigned a bit of credit with more of a bell curve shape. These two systems are part of larger reward-guided learning systems involving several prefrontal areas, but what isn't known is if the credit assignment systems are using sensory representations to assign credit, and when these representations would be reactivated. In order to address these questions, we had participants perform a localizer task and the two-arm bandit while recording EEG. In the localizer, participants responded to a stimulus being right side up or upside down. This was done to ensure that they remained engaged, and the task was used to gather scalp voltages related to the sensory representation of the two stimuli which were used in the main study. In the two-arm bandit, each arm had an independent drifting probability of leading to a reward. Participants would experience one of two stimuli overlaid with some points, followed by the next stimulus. They then had up to 4 seconds to choose which stimulus to gamble on, and after a long delay, received feedback about their choice and the other option, known as the counterfactual. We leveraged the use of EEG recording for their high temporal precision and used support vector machines known as SVMs to decode the representations of face and house stimuli at different epochs of the study. SVMs have been shown in previous work done by the Luck Lab to be able to readily decode single item representations, in the case of this study, teardrops, using both ERPs and instantaneous alpha band amplitudes. We had two predictions for this study, the first being that the credit assignment system should lead to reactivation of representations of choice information at feedback, and the second being that credit assignment system should reactivate representations of stimuli at choice. We first verified that we could decode the sensory representations of face and house stimuli using the localizer, the main task, and then a cross task, so turning on the localizer data and testing on the main study's perceptual signals. As you can see, we were rather successful, albeit you lose a bit of accuracy when doing the cross-sensory decoding. Next, we moved on to decoding face versus house at feedback for both wins and losses independent of choice. You can see here that these feedback signals both lead to distinguishable decodability at about 300 milliseconds, which is sustained a bit longer for the losses than the wins. This didn't, however, tell us if the signals are the same signals generated by sensory representations, so we next used our localizer to train an SVM and tested on these feedback signals. And in short, it does not appear to be the case that these signals generated at feedback for either wins or losses are sensory, as denoted by the highlighted areas. We then moved on to alpha band decoding, where we saw separability and reactivation of feedback related to items chosen and counterfactuals. Here we can see that alpha band decoding for win outcomes comes online at about 1,000 milliseconds, and if we plot the difference in power between the two stimuli, we see a large power increase at frontal sites. When we plot the losses for outcomes, we see that this reactivation comes online a bit earlier and seems to be supported by increases in alpha at more parietal sites. Moving on to counterfactual wins, we see a similar timing of decodability as outcome losses, albeit a bit earlier, and the same power increase in alpha at parietal sites. Last, we see a similar but later temporal profile for the counterfactual losses as outcome wins, which also shows a similar pattern of increased power at frontal sites. Finally, leveraging the fact that decoding in the alpha band, we could look at long epochs without having to worry about drifting voltages, we see that across the long delay, we can decode the difference between face and house signals, but that it is not sustained. Additionally, in this case, we see the biggest increase in alpha at frontal sites. So in summary, we find evidence for reinstatement in ERPs for wins and losses at feedback. These representations are distinct from sensory/perceptual representations of stimuli used in the task. We find evidence in the alpha band for reinstatement of representations at feedback independently for chosen outcomes and counterfactuals, and we find evidence that alpha band choice reinstatement is not sustained. Future work will involve single trial analysis of EEG data to relate back to prediction error updating. Thank you for your attention. Details on the specific methodology will be included in the poster PDF for those that are interested. Have a good day.